There's something that we never talk about on this channel, but that's extremely important to me is aesthetics. Things have to have the right feel and the right look, or it drives me crazy. It's like a pet peeve. So for me, the right aesthetic is, I'm going to say like 1970, and you can go 5 years either direction in 1970 and still be in an extremely cool zone. In fact, like when future historians look back on the American automotive hot rod culture, they're going to pinpoint 1970 as the high watermark, and everything else is going to be judged around that. So that's pretty much how I pattern things. That's what I look for. 1970. The Plan Z is a pretty good example of that. When I originally conceptualized this car, I wanted something that you could take a time machine and drop this in the pits at, let's say, the 1972 Spring Nationals, and have H gas written on the C-pillar, and the car would fit right in. Nobody would even give it a second glance because it was the right car. It had all the normal stuff for the day. And that's why it looks the way it does. That's why there's holes drilled in things instead of having, just lightweight, fiberglass. Low budget cars back then, lower gas class cars didn't. They used steel, and they ground away, and they drilled holes, and they did all of this stuff. It's why the car is built in the head that it is. There were a couple of deviations from what would have been. Like, for instance, it's got a monster tack, right? Which, obviously, in 1972, 1973, there wouldn't have been a monster tack. The wheels aren't quite period. I'm looking for the right ones for it, though, and I'll get them eventually. But that was the spirit of this car. Not only did I want it to look like 1971, 2, 3, like that, but it's got to sound like that. It's got to feel like that. It's got to smell like that. Like when I get in this car to take it for a run, let's say, I want to live 1972, 1973. Oh, the other exception is it's got an automatic in it. And originally I built this car with a stick because that's what it would have been. But I wanted other people to be able to take this car out and run it, so I stuck an automatic in it, and that's it. At some point, if I get to the point that I want to just run the car myself, I'll throw a stick back in it. But yeah, it's little things like that. And that brings us the Slag Hammer. Al's busy flogging it. What's going on, Al?
What's going on,
What
bro?
are you doing?
Oh, just running some wires in the frame.
Al is sorting through the wiring here. He's got we're mapping through, and he's fitting things where they've got to fit. You still got the taillights on?
Yeah.
Look at this. Right? Look at, what a look. Bam! Did I just knock something on your head?
Yeah, the coil.
Oh, sorry.
We're good.
We were just stressing on where we're going to mount the coil. I mean, I left it laying on the frame rail, so we're going to put our big yellow coil right
on my head.
Right, so the aesthetics of this car are extremely important to me. More so than the typical car, because it's a gasser / street freak, so it's got to come from that era. And like I said, 1970 to me is the high watermark of the whole American hot rod culture. And this is a car that would have come from that era, and I wanted to look, feel, sound, and have all of the elements that it would have had back then. So you lay out an imaginary story when you build something like this. Like, for instance, if this car was built in 1967, when the high and mighty gasser trend had come to an end, or it was in its final days, it would have been built out of a car that, let's say, an insurance company wreck, it was hitting the front, it was hitting the side, whatever it happened to be. You'd buy a car like this cheap from the insurance company, you'd have an old Dodge pickup truck frame, and you would channel the body over the frame, and voila, you've got a gasser. And a lot of people have commented on how wide the front stance is on this car. It's not. That's exactly how this car would have been built in the day. So you go back to that imaginary story about this car. So you'd say, well, 1966, 1967, somebody wants to build a gasser or fillet metal car, they'll buy a totaled car. They'll grab a pickup truck frame out of the wrecking yard and mate the two of them together. And this is what you end up with. Now, this type of car went out of favor as a race car around 1969, because at that point, tires got big. Tires and just overall the traction situation changed, and so the car started to get lower and lower and lower. And you know, if you look at gases from, like, say, the 1970 era, they sit very level. They sit squatted down in the back. They're level in the front, or standard height in the front. They're squatted down in the back, and they used to open the wheel openings. They'd bring the wheel arch way up here like this, and that's how the cars would sit. So this type of car as a race car was outdated, and then they get passed on to the street guys. So somebody will buy this car in 1971, 72 as an obsolete race car and say, I'm going to put this thing on the street. And so they would add or change whatever they had to do to make it streetable. And that is the classic street freak. That's what we came to know as the street freak. And this style of car was around on the streets until around 1975, 1976. And then the pro stock look started, and what we know today as pro street started to be the thing. So that's why we've done a lot of the things that we did on this car. And like I said, it's not just aesthetic, it's not just the look, it's the actual feel, the smell, the idea of the car. People were like, well, why don't you just buy traction bars for it? The way, you know, because now they make traction, this is built on a pickup truck frame, and they make the traction bars for the pickup trucks. And I was like, well, if it was 1972 and you bought this obsolete race car, it wouldn't have modern traction bars on it. It would have something that was engineered by its owner, by its builder, you know, kind of cobbled together, a lot of trial and error. And so that's what we did here. We built a rear suspension that is literally, well, okay, it's dark under there. I know, you guys complain about the lighting. For good reason. I know, I got to get a light under there. But we built it in the fashion that this car would have been built in the day. And people always say, oh, the front wheels are too wide, the front axle's too wide, narrow the front axle. No, if this car was built in the day and run in the day and modified in the day, that's exactly how it would have been. They wouldn't have narrowed the axle. They would have stuck the axle in there just the way they pulled it out of the pickup truck, and that would be the end of it. And that's what gave these cars that animalistic sort of stance. We're trying to minimize deviations from the era. Like right now, we've got an aluminum radiator in the car. It won't have one for long. It's just in there right now so we can make the power tour and go. But eventually it'll have the right old school radiator in the thing. Obviously these Mopar performance valve covers aren't from the era, but this engine isn't in here to be from the era. This is just a mock-up engine. We've got some vintage, very cool valve covers to go on it. Chrome. Little things like this, right? I know it's stupid, it's simple, right? But look at that steering wheel, okay? Look at the way it fits in there. So many guys would build a car like this, and then they get one of these like billet tribal flame crazy, like, you know, steering wheels, and I'll throw it in there, and it's just like, it totally throws the whole balance off, you know? These seats. So these seats, if this car was built as a race car in 1965, 66, 67, it wouldn't have had these seats. But these seats, these molded fiberglass seats, started to become the thing in the very early 70s, 72, 73, when tube chassis cars really started. So the pro stock cars and everything would have these molded fiberglass seat like this. So you can get away with this. If you bought this thing as a deceased or an obsolete race car, you know, in 1971, 1972, and you wanted to put it on the street and doll it up a little bit, you'd get a pair of these fiberglass buckets just like this and bolt them in there. So even though they're not period correct for that you know, 1967, 68 era, they fit the general story of what a car like this would be. And we're going to go through this thing, and literally 100% of it, by the time we're done with this, 100% of this car will be a total and complete time machine. Something that not only looks like the era, but like smells like the era, feels like the era, actually is the era. You'd work on the car the way you'd work on it. Actually, if you wanted to draw a parallel to this car, what we're doing here, the 55 Chevy from two-lane blacktop is like pretty much the perfect example. Obsolete race car with all of its obsolete race car quirks and issues and so on and so forth, but made just streetable enough to go roll around the country and do their thing. And it reminded me of something. We have to hook something up here. So Al is working on, this is the wiring of this. So he's got the taillights. Right? Look how cool that is, right? So he's got the taillights wired up, but no reverse light. And I don't know how it was in every part of the country, but in New York, what we used to do is put a toggle switch for the reverse lights. So that if you were out on the boulevard or cruising around and you were looking for action, you were looking to race, you'd have your reverse lights on. And that's how people would know. They pull up to you at a stoplight, you know, and they would know that you were ready for action because you had your reverse lights on. So that's another thing we're going to do with this car is we're going to wire in the a toggle switch for the lights. So Al.
Yes, sir.
What do you got to say about all of this?
I'm digging it, man. For sure. Every time we put something out here, the board just like, it's coming along, man.
Yeah, it's like every little bit you add is jewelry.
Oh, it is. It's nothing but jewelry on this car.
But crude, unrefined jewelry.
Yes.
Which is where the beauty of this thing is.
Exactly. I mean, because we're putting it together with parts, you know, like you're saying, you know, that was thrown in the garage somewhere and left for dead for 20 years, whatever. And now it has a purpose.
Yep.
You know, and this is what this whole build is, man.
And a lot of that is legitimately true. A lot of this is stuff that I had thrown in the garage in the corner or whatever for X amount of years. And okay, here, let's build a car out of it. You know, it's a true hot rod. You know, that's the thing about this. It's one of a kind. You'll never see another one like it. It's all individual, distinct personality. The chains. The chains are my favorite part of this whole car. Because if this was built by a guy in his garage in 1969, whatever year it happened to be, that is exactly how he would have held the front of this thing from tipping over forward. And of course, the tilt front end is a big part of that because these cars were worked on constantly. And to climb over fenders and do all of the other stuff, no, didn't pay. So one-piece front ends, tilt front ends. So that's it. I think I pretty much covered the gamut on this. It would be nice to be able to run this thing in like the Southeast Gassers. See, the Southeast Gassers, that's a series, I love what they do. Fast, you know, the factory appearing stock tire guys,
right,
and SEGA, the Southeast Gassers Association, are two groups that I love. Like, the fast cars have to look exactly the way they came off the showroom floor. It's got to have a roll cage because of you know, but it has to be hidden.
Yep.
Right? Any modifications, you could have a fuel pump on the car, but it has to be hidden. So when you look at the car, it looks and it sounds like it just came off the showroom floor. That's a big part of it.
Yep.
And then the Southeast Gassers, with the Southeast Gassers, these guys are great. You got to read the rule book to really appreciate what they're about. They draw the line at 1967. Okay, nothing. I mean, literally, when I tell you not a nut, bolt, wire, clamp, nothing post 1967 is allowed. They go through such extents that if you have, let's say, a fuel cell in the back of the car, which you would need to be, you know, for safety reasons, the trunk has to be closed when it's in the pits. So when you walk past it, you can't see anything modern in there. They have a spec for exactly which wheel you can use, you know, because after 1967, let's say Krager changed this part of the rim, you know what I mean? To the casual observer, it looks like the same exact thing. But to the SEGA guys, no, it's exact. It's got to be exact. They do the same thing with like shifters and all sorts of other things. This car is way too liberal to ever fit into the SEGA classes. Not to mention the fact that it's an automatic. SEGA only 4-speed because Gassers in the day did not have automatic transmissions unless it was a blown car like a AA, double B, double C Gasser. They would all have manual transmissions. So that's one of the things I love about SEGA. Everything has got to be exact. I'm telling you, find the rule book for SEGA. It's online, right? And read through. They don't leave any stone unturned. It's like they're fanatical about it, and I give them all the respect in the world for it. It makes me want to go see their races because you literally are stepping into a time machine there. It's 1967 when you're at one of their events. So that's it. Aesthetics, right? The feng shui of hot rodding. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little nutty. What do you think, bro? Am I nuts?
No,
You get it, right?
we're both nuts.
We're both nuts.
But this car is following its own rules, baby.
It is.
It's loud, obnoxious, crude. Just get out of the way.
Rude, crude, and go in our big yellow coil. We spent about 20 minutes trying to figure out the best place to put that for aesthetic
Right.
reasons. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we come out to here, we come out to there, but it looks best here. You know?
Oh yeah.
So, all right, guys, that's it. I'm out of here. I'll see you tomorrow.